I want to call your attention to chapter 12. I don't know if you've ever looked at it or not. Chapter 12 is actually the chapter on rehearsal techniques.
Yeah, I don't think I've been through this one.
Yeah. Um, there are a ton of ideas in here. But what I first did is just outline some philosophies.
Mhm.
Let's just go over those real quick. The success of the ensemble depends completely on the educator up front. The band is a lengthened shadow of you and what you're able to bring to the band. There's just no way around
Mhm.
that. That's why it's wonderful what you're doing to try to improve yourself because that's going to really show up in your band.
That's the hope. That's the hope.
Two, take time to teach principles in the rehearsals rather than just giving directions. And this can be hard. It's harder to do this if you're right next to the concert. It's like, fix that, do this, you know.
Mhm.
But if you're in the front of the year, and I think the biggest deterrent to education is having a concert too early in the year, where all of a sudden you're under pressure to do that. You don't have time to actually teach. I think you need to have time to teach, and if you have time at the front of the year to actually teach principles, then those principles are going to keep coming back all year. And
Mhm.
if you've taught a principle, and maybe you've taught that principle about how to take a deep breath and fill up the horn, pull the swing back, you know, and now you don't have to teach that again because maybe in February now you taught that in November or you taught that in September or whatever, and now in February you say, remember to pull the swing back, get your air going, and it's like it teaches it again immediately because you had the time to set up something you can allude to.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
But I know the prophet's job. I mean the prophet's statement on how do you govern the people of Nauvoo.
Mhm.
It was a big people at that time. It was bigger than Chicago. It was the biggest city in the state at that time. How do you
Yeah,
govern such a large people? Well, I don't. I teach them correct principles, and they govern themselves. And I think that's how I always try to teach.
yeah,
Teach the principles, then the student can solve those problems for themselves when they're practicing at home, when they're in sectionals, etc.
hmm
It makes your
yeah,
job much better if you teach principles. Three, a huge key to developing a superior ensemble is working on detail. Had that situation, and I think that he really understood it because he'd become a great band director. But years ago, David Fulmer used to teach at Pleasant Grove High School,
hmm
and my job was to work with his band at a jazz festival after we adjudicated. I was the one that went up and worked with the band afterwards. And they had the big stuff going, but the whole thing they needed was working on a lot of detail. And I really took the band to task on getting all the details. And Dave got the message, and he started doing that. His Temp View band won a lot of years. They won, and I think it's because he learned how to work on detail.
Okay, yeah,
But he was not doing that as a young teacher, and I had to push him quite a bit. I tried to do it gracefully by pushing the kids a lot on it, but I think he got the messages that I
yeah.
was trying to give him. You know that when you get adjudicated comments, most of them are for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But the adjudicator will try to help you save face by addressing it to the kids.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep. I feel you. Really for me.
Number four, we ultimately get whatever we ask for. And if you don't believe they can do it, they won't do it. But if you believe they can and you ask for it, you'll be surprised what you can get these kids to do. Amazing.
Yeah,
Years, many
that's
years ago, when I was still a student at BYU, I did some of my practice teaching. I forgot what it was called, but over at Wasatch Elementary, just across the Ninth East there.
hmm
And I had like fourth, fifth, sixth graders.
okay.
Well, most people would say, you can't work on intonation with those kids. They're still working on tone production. They don't even have developed embouchures, and stuff. You can't worry about intonation with kids like that. Oh, really? Well, I did. I really worked with them on intonation. And at the concert, my group played in tune. Like, wow. You get what you ask for, honestly. And
Yeah.
I don't care how young the kids are. I really believe with Jerome Bruner, he said you can teach anything at any age level if you just teach it the right amount.
Yeah.
Don't overwhelm the kids. Don't teach too much at a time. I really think over a period of time with young students, you can teach a lot of the same exact stuff that I teach in the college, and that's what I do with I've got junior high private students, and I
Mhm.
teach them the same things that I would to my college students. It's
Yeah.
just a little slower and more gradual, but I've got some junior high kids that have done really well. In fact, Bryn Chapman, when she was in the ninth grade, she studied with me from the eighth grade. In the ninth grade, she won the second alto chair in the All-State Jazz Band.
Right. Yeah.
They can do a lot. Don't sell them short. And achieving excellence is the ultimate ensemble morale builder. I believe that's how you really build morale in your ensemble is by achieving excellence. That means that you're taking the hard route. You're doing that nitty gritty, grind it out, hard work, which isn't fun. And so it's tempting to just have the kids play through the chart and have fun. Okay, let's play the next chart. Ah, it's fun. Let's play the next chart. Have fun. But after a little while, that's not fun anymore because after a while, the kids start saying, "Yeah, but the band sucks.
Yeah.
I'm not part of anything special.
Yeah.
I don't really. I'm not getting anything out of this."
Yeah.
Whereas you really work with the kids on some challenging stuff, and they start to feel success, and the band starts to feel good. That's when the morale really builds. I really think it's worth that extra nitty gritty drive to get to that point because that's what's gonna. And then the kids start saying, "Man, this is cool." I'm like, "It's a privilege for you to be here. This is like something special to be part of."
Right.
If you can establish that, that's really valuable.
Cool. Very cool. That actually speaks really strong for you right now because as I've been kind of like thinking back on this past year, I especially noticed like in my percussion class, my percussion ensemble, I was starting to feel that, and you just kind of put it into words for me, and it's like,
Yeah,
okay, that's what I've been feeling, you
yeah,
know, and so thank you for that.
yeah. That last thing is kind of obvious, but sight reading regularly is a good key to developing a great ensemble.
Hmm.
Chapter 13, the next chapter, has some ideas on sight reading. But, and I think I tell this story in here, but Jeff Tower was a good friend of mine. And actually, Jeff was here, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, did the All-State Jazz Band in Utah.
Okay.
But he was the director at Hemet High School for many, many years. He was a great bass trombone player, played in Ashley Alexander's band. But he had one of the top high school bands in the country year after year, Hemet High School in California. And what was behind that was quite interesting to me because they'd start school at the end of August, or the latter part of August, and they would actually just sight read every rehearsal. They sight read the entire rehearsal, every rehearsal, until Thanksgiving.
Interesting.
Yeah, read, 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 read. Well, that's a big key to learning how to sight read, right? That's how
Yeah.
you learn to sight read is read. Well, he was taking notes. I mean, he had a pile of charts off the floor, that they'd gone through, but he was taking notes on which ones he liked and wanted to come back to. But they were just read charts like crazy. And then he would, right after Thanksgiving, he'd come back and he'd start to actually rehearse. Well, by this time, the kids are reading so well that they don't have to do nearly as much rehearsing.
Yeah.
Plus, he knows which charts he wants to spend the time on, and then they really go after the nitty gritty and polish it, But
Yeah.
sight reading was a big key for him in building a really quality program all the time.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting part. Cool.
All right, so the rest of this chapter has to do with a lot of different ideas for how do you tighten the ensemble. In other words, how do you work on ensemble precision where the band really sounds like a team where they're playing together. And so this first one is like, how do you tighten the time fill? If you look at the Roman numeral 2, you have to go over a page. How do you tighten rhythms? And there's a lot of ideas in here. How
Yeah.
do you tighten the articulation? We spent a lot of time talking about that lately, but there's some ideas in there. And how do you tighten the sound of each of the sections? How do you tighten across the horn sections? So this chapter has got just 1,000 ideas. It would take us a long time to actually talk through each one of these, but I think that they're fairly explanatory.
Hmm.
So, for example, if you're trying to tighten time fill, go back over to that. That's Roman numeral 1. What are the typical time issues? Well, having the bass and drums lock the time up together.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the energy in the time feel. Working with the comping so that the comping isn't overactive and too busy and cluttered. And then getting the horns to play the time with the rhythm section. Those are the biggest issues that I think we run into in the band. So here's how I work on it. First, I teach the band about the 12 o'clock thing. Have you seen me talk about this before?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really easy for the drummer to be playing at 5 minutes until 12, and the bass player's playing at 5 minutes after 12. And they're doing it consistently, and there's this schism in the time where we want to come together and lock up as one. And working on that, we'll maybe talk about that a little bit more next time, but I actually have you should really definitely try to take some time and watch some of those videos on the rhythm section.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of those videos has to do with that. And we illustrate where it's not quite locked up, and then when it is, and you can hear the difference, and it's pretty revealing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I feel like that's one of the videos on the rhythm section I have watched. Probably the only one, but
Yeah.
Where you talk about the 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's really important. And then the energy should come from the player, not from electricity. And so you got your bass player depending on electricity to take care of projecting his sound. You're not going to get any energy out of that.
Yeah.
So what I do with the bass player, I guess we're kind of getting into rhythm section now, but I'll have him turn the bass down about halfway. I say, whatever your volume control is, turn it in half. Okay, now I want you to play just as loud. And it's amazing what happens, because all of a sudden the personal energy kicks in. You start feeling a whole different time feel. And the tone, it was bang, bang, bang. It's got some clarity to it. It's not all, it makes a really big difference. And it's true for the guitar player too. You want them to dig in and put their personal energy into it, not just depend on electricity.
Yeah.
So you put all your personal energy you can into it, and then when they need just a little bit more, then you sweeten that a little bit with the amp. But you don't have the amp take that over,
That's
one
one
of
makes
the
a lot of sense. Yeah.
one of the things that really ruins the time feel, because you can't hear you can't hear the clarity in the time. There's no definition in the time if you got the bass amp turned up too high.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think we demonstrated that too on some of those videos.
Okay.
And then working with the comping, you get your piano and guitar that have the same role as each other. We'll talk more about this next week, but you've got to get the comping coordinated so that you never have two players comping actively at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little tricky, but there's some things you can do. And there's a lot on, I think it's chapter 17, there's a lot in there, or maybe it's 16. I think it's 17. There's a lot in chapter 17 on the rhythm section for next week. You should read at least 16 and 17, I think it is, in the rhythm section. 14 is developing a concept, and 15 is gear. 16, though, is rehearsal issues with your rhythm section. And then 17 deals with a lot of those things that are common problems with getting the bass and drums and the piano and the guitar working together. And there's a ton of ideas in there about how to get the guitar and the piano, how they can coordinate and work together and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I will go through that.
For next week, you should definitely read chapter 16 and 17 minimum. If you could read 15, 16, 17, 18, or 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, those 5 rhythm section chapters, that would be ideal. But at least read 16 and 17. And then watch all the videos that are in the rhythm section playlist.
Okay.
That would save us a lot of time. All right, then getting the horns by the rhythm section stuff. But look at the next part. That's defining the typical issues that we have to deal with. Techniques and ideas for working on time now. As previously mentioned, use the metronome or a drum machine. Turn it on, get the tempo, then turn it off and start the tune. After 16 or 32 bars, stop and turn it on again. See what has happened to the time. and make adjustments. Try again. Okay, are we after 16 bars? Are we faster than the metronome in that amount of time, or are we slower than the metronome in that amount of time?
Yeah, the routine.
And that kind of work can really help become aware of, oh, I need to drive the time a little bit more. It keeps lagging, or I'm always pushing at things. I need to kind of relax into the groove a little bit more.
Yeah.
And number two, use the stick to line up the time. I use a heavy drumstick, like those really thick ones, like they use in marching bands, and put that on a cowbell and bam, 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 so that everybody in the band can hear where the pulse is. It's like a magic thing. Again, it just lines up the time so fast, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it makes people aware of where they're pushing and where they're dragging. Having the ensemble sing the figures with the rhythm section, so they can try to make it feel so it aligns in the rhythm section properly. That's a good one, number 3. And so on. In other words, each of these areas where I feel like we need to work on precision in the ensemble, I'm defining what are the issues, and then here are some practice ideas for it.
Yeah, these are great. It's good.
And I think reading through this is a really important chapter for today's topic. You should read through this too.
Yeah, I will.
Look over at this. Number 5, it's on page 84. Tightening across the horn sections. So here are some ideas for rehearsing figures that go across sections. I like to use a cross-section checking of parts. For example, have the lead trumpet and the bass trombone play together. Perhaps with the rhythm section, or the baritone sax and the bass trombone and the upright bass play together. You can do combinations of instruments across sections. When they're doing things together, they need to hear each other and know how to play together. Similarly, I like to hear the leads of each section play together. That can be really revealing. And you understand that if everybody's playing, the entire ensemble is playing, then the lead trumpet player is the lead of the whole band.
Yeah.
And that means if I'm playing lead trombone, I'm trying to match how the lead trumpet player is handling things. And if I'm playing lead saxophone, I'm trying to match how the lead trumpet player is trying to handle things.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm just leading over a section, a soli, on this, and I'm playing lead alto, then I'm leading my section. I don't have to try to match somebody else. I want them to match me. But if I'm playing on the whole ensemble, then I'm trying to match the lead trumpet.
Yeah.
That's kind of the pecking order. And of course, the lead trumpet player should be set in the pace. You have to kind of work with him to do that. And sometimes the band director will override the lead trumpet player to get what you need. But this is a cool idea. I really like doing this. Hear the leads of each section, then hear the seconds of each section, and then hear the thirds of each section, and the fourths and the fifths of each section, so that you're actually going to fix intonation issues, you're going to fix articulation issues, and rhythmic issues, and time issues. It's really amazing what you can fix if you just go across the sections like that.
Cool. Yeah.
If you go back to number 4, tightening the section sound, the sound of each section. We've talked about this a little bit, but first I'm going to fix any note problems.
Yeah.
And of course, rhythmic problems. But I often use the holding note idea. Have those who play the questionable notes sustain the notes together, one note at a time. Problems will be immediately apparent and can be corrected. Just take it at a time, one note at a time. Just conduct it. And then number 2, I mentioned the one-on-one technique already. This is really powerful in helping your section come together. I mentioned this last week, number 3. Be sure in the parts of the chart that are unique to the section that you have taken the time to unify the accents. Especially important in a soli. Especially important if they're in harmony, because, like we said, the lines may not have the same top points.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Unifying breathing places. That's common. That's just stuff you do in concert band too. But we talked about number 5 already, actually. Number 6, intonation problems can best be solved if we use the idea of holding out notes one at a time The source of problems become more apparent and can be fixed. Use of a chromatic tuner down the line can help solve problems quickly by bringing in an awareness of where the problems are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we talked about this in terms of articulation. Go back to number 3. There's a lot of stuff in here, and we've talked a whole lot about articulation since we started here, but I don't think we talked about this idea. If you look at number 10, it's on page 81,
Mm-hmm.
where the written examples are. Look at the bottom written example. Ba-da. Having that tongue stop on beat 4, so there's a little piece of silence right before the dot. Ba-da. That's amazing what that does to clean up an ensemble and make it sound more tight.
Okay.
If you go ba-da, not going to have nearly the clarity.
Yeah, like that makes a lot of sense.
And if it's a fall, ba-bow. That little stop just before the fall gives a lot more power to the fall, and it's also going to make the band play more tight together.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm rehearsing the band, and if that's not working, and I don't have everybody doing it, I'll say, okay, wait a minute, I want to hear this. Ba. Don't play the next note.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to hear the tongue stop. And I mean it's a square tongue stop right on beat 4. Ba. Down. You know, and I won't let them play the bow until I get the tongue stop on beat 4.
Yeah, cool. And so that applies in any situation. I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So that like a long note and then followed by a dot or a fall.
Yeah. Look at the example above it now. It might apply here too, where I'm going ba dot. How about ba dot?
Mm-hmm.
Ba dot. There's a little decay, or it could even be ba dot. Could actually be a tongue stop. Either way, I want that dot or that fall to really have to really have some impact. And so if I go ba down, it's not gonna. But I go ba down.
Yep.
Now I got some percussive impact. Ba down. No. Ba down. I could do it similarly with a little bit of decay in the long note, right on, not like ba ba, not decay all across the note, just decay right on the very end of the note, just before you go to the dot or the fall or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not hitting everything, but I think you're seeing now. Oh, there's a lot of value in this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm actually really excited to like really pick through this chapter now.
Look at page 79. And I've got some more examples written here. This actually is better defined in chapter 8 on how to work with rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
But rehearsal ideas. Let's say that I've got this written. The second thing is what I have written. We're looking at the dotted quarter and then the eighth note tied to the half note. Ba, 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 ba. And most of the time the band's going to go ba, ba. And they're going to play the upbeat too soon. It'll play it like an upbeat. Ba, ba. I want it to be almost on the downbeat. Ba, 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 ba. It's like a flam or like a grace note. Ba, ba. I want it to be late. So I'll actually tell the band, no, I just want to hear 2 half notes. Ba, 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 ba. Again. Ba, ba. Now we barely beat the second note. Ba, ba.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I do it in cut time, that makes more sense. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, it's amazing how this can tighten up. And if you look at the second rhythm, this is what I call the most maligned rhythm in all of jazz. But if you look at the dotted quarter, eighth tied to a quarter, and then the quarters, ba, ba, bop. Well, the band usually screws this rhythm up. Ba, ba, bop. Because there's a long wait for the second note, and then no waiting for the third note. Ba, ba, bop. And to get that right, usually most everybody wants it to be ba, ba, bop, kind of equidistant. They're not. Ba, ba, bop. So I'll have them play instead half note and 2 quarters. Ba, bop, bop. Ba, bop, bop. Ba, bop, bop. Now just barely anticipate the second note. Ba, ba, bop. Ba, ba, bop. And that helps us to put in perspective where that last note really belongs.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of talking here.
No, it's good.
Just kind of pointing out some things, but
Yep.
there's more stuff in here than you think. I mean, it's not like verbose and really lengthy, but man, if you start dissecting it, there's a lot of ideas there that can really help.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And these are ideas that I use all the time, and they're effective.
Which is exciting. I'm getting excited. It's making me sad that today's the last day of school. I mean, some of this. You mean some of this? Details and stuff. I'll apply to my marching band rehearsals this summer, but
Yeah,
it's got somehow I got to remember it for next year. So
yeah,
I guess it's a good thing I still have the book.
yeah. You got the book, and you got some videos that demonstrate some of this stuff
Go
too.
for it next year. So.
That video that I showed you early on with the Camus band. They're in Camus. That's not the name. Whatever it is, it's South Summit,
So, yeah.
and they. I mean, I'm not only was fixing percussive articulation, but if you watch the whole video, I was actually fixing tone production issues, fixing intonation things, and other things along the way. Tongue cut off. Can you cut that with the tongue? There was a lot of rehearsal stuff in there.
Yeah.
And I need to get some of that other stuff online. Okay, rhythm section next time.
Okay.
We'll just
Yeah.
meet-
So I'll go through a bunch of all those videos and these chapters
yeah,
and come ready next week.
we'll really work on rhythm section concepts next time. That's as you pointed out at the very beginning session, that's one of the most challenging things that you got to do.
Yeah. It is.